I mean, you can discuss stuff all day, but that's not what we are talking about. You know, you're talking about violent revolution, executing the enemies of your ideology, executing rich people, employers, like everybody. You know, that's kind of on the evil side for me. And discussing ideas, I don't have a problem with that. But when you talk about like genocide, that's where it stops being funny. You know?
Well, it ain't genocide. We're not talking about eliminating a people, a culture, a race, a society, a gender, or nothing like that. We're
Does
talking about
genocide
eliminating.
have to be related to genetics? Can't you say genocide rich people?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, during the French Revolution, when they started up and separating the heads of nobles from their bodies, would you say that was a genocide of the noblemen?
I mean, I'm not really familiar with the technical definition of the English word genocide, but if you want to argue about that, then maybe.
If you want to say the French Revolution constituted genocide, then I would be willing to admit that I am interested in genocide against the
Let's
wealthy. I
okay.
don't think that's common
Let's say
parlance, though.
let's say mass murder. If
Oh, I'm
on
totally
the
fine with
scale of a
that.
genocide, if you like that term, or if it
So,
makes you feel
so,
better, you can fix this without the violent communist revolution. I think the
well,
biggest problem is the corrupt U.S. political system.
that's a
So,
big one, but I would argue that the corruption in the US political system is a product and feature of capitalism, not a bug. I don't think that capitalism is functioning poorly in this country at all. I think it's working exactly as it's intended to. Though
so
to
how
say
are
it's
there?
intended to work at all,
So how are there?
sorry, I suppose, but I'm not exactly a big fan of the Scandinavian countries myself.
Because you think they delay your glorious revolution where you can slaughter the rich people?
You got it. And eat them. It's not like we'd let the bodies go to waste.
All right. And that's going to be it. There's nothing more we can talk about,
No,
really.
I mean I can make ethical arguments for the validity of violence against wealthy business owners.
The government you live under does not allow peaceful protest and real change to be made peacefully. If it's the only option to to dismantle a system that is inherently unjust,
So you do not
then
believe
yes.
it's valid in America because we do have freedom of speech and
Yeah,
assembly.
because you have freedom of speech. You have, if you convince enough people of your ideology, you can change it. And if you can't manage to
Well,
do that, then it's tough luck. Tough luck, I guess.
well, not everyone's willing to give in to tough luck. You know, transgender people have had a whole bunch of tough luck for decades trying to convince the general populace that they're not a bunch of child molesting freaks. I don't think that means they should just roll over onto their bellies and give up. Point. Now, he has, both directly and indirectly, contributed to the rise of a political ideology which poses a very legitimate threat to the lives of minority groups, Jews, blacks, Hispanics, and to a lesser extent, women, transgender folk, and basically everyone on the alt-right shit list. He is a threat. His existence and the things he speaks out into the microphones are a threat. Do you not believe that any of these minority groups would be right in engaging in violence against him?
No, I don't believe so. Fighting
But
violence, but
the black woman whose husband just got lynched does not want the milquetoast sympathy of some liberal halfway across the world. She wants a gun in her hands. That's the thing. Right wingers have always felt comfortable engaging in violence because their violence, being conservative, is fundamentally an action of the status quo and works in conjunction with the state to suppress the rights of
that's
minorities.
not necessarily true. I don't think Richard Spence is working towards the status quo. I think he's working to overthrow the status quo, as most right-wing violent politically violent people do, because they want their own revolution that they also think is right, just like you do.
Hard disagree. Fascism would not require a revolution in this country. We have a fascist in office right now.
I
Well,
don't think
more than
Trump is a
one.
fascist by definition. I think he's a maybe you could call him a pro recent
And I
years.
would only talk about violent revolution in America because it is this country with which I am most familiar. But in this country, the right wing, and by the way, all you have to do is see those videos taken at alt-right rallies to see the police cozying on up to the alt-right protesters. The idea that they are just there ambivalently protecting both sides from violence is completely fallacious. When you look on the ground, when you see how police and alt-righters engage with one another in political action, the degree of support marred between one group and another indicates the collaboration the state has with these groups. Not unlike a, oh, hey, I secretly bought off all the police kind of thing. That's a little bit conspiratorial. But in terms of their general tendencies, the state is absolutely a proponent of right-wing violence. And it's for that reason that I support
I would
contrary
find that
violence.
very hard link to make, to say that the state.
And the protests in the 80s in favor of gay acceptance. All of these groups, towards modern day transgender rights being attacked on both ends from legislators who address them as like child molesting perverts to right wingers on the internet who address them as child molesting perverts. The collaboration between right wing and state violence is undeniable in American history. And it is for that reason that retaliatory left-wing violence is not just violence, it is an act of defense. It is an act of just and ethical retaliation, which is necessary to ensure the survival of minorities in this country.
I don't even think political violence.
Revolution? State
Who
violence?
is supporting violent revolution?
Me.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Thank you. Respecting and acknowledging the existence of material conditions as the foundation of ideological development rather than the alternative. I am not going to spend my life with a beret on the street corner handing out pamphlets advocating for revolution day in, day out, because I'm playing the long game. I and folks who are like-minded to me are going to spend their lives and hopefully the lives of our children and grandchildren and so on and so forth, living their lives and waiting patiently for a time where the American political landscape is rife with antagonism towards the state and towards the wealthy. This has happened in the past, and it'll happen again. There are always cycles of antagonism that broil across countries with economic and social problems. And all it takes during those times is a little spark.
So you think fueling social unrest, social distrust, and in general violence against the state itself would constitute a climate that promotes revolution?
I think if it was done intelligently and with respects to the wishes of the American public, then yes, absolutely.
Because
we do have a shared
that
interest.
It would necessarily.
There have been revolutions that have panned out well. The American Revolution was, at least in my opinion, a pretty decent example of how to further a ideological goal in a way which is respective to the interests of the populace. I think it would be possible to engage in a mode of discourse which would allow for a revolution that turns out a little bit more like the American Revolution and a little bit less like the Russian Revolution. A little bit more, hey, society is overwhelmingly favoring the rise of a new political order, and they are going to make a bid for secession, and should that fail, it's going to be a conflict, and a little bit less literally seizing Washington, D.C. with, like, helicopters and proclaiming a new world order.
Okay, so for me, it sounds you want like a revolution to burn this shit down and then see what happens.
No, I want capitalism to end, and I don't think that is possible through reform. So I must reluctantly turn towards non-reformist strategies for bringing about the end of capitalism. There's always going to be an air of non-practical, philandering about the future when you're talking to ideologues. Jefferson, Washington, Adams, Robespierre, all of these people probably sounded like head in the clouds dipshits to their contemporaries before the material conditions of the time proved them right.
Of them were. I mean, are you a fan of Robespierre?
He's an alright dude.
Oh my fucking god.
Okay. Look, I don't agree with everything.
It wasn't called the Reign of Terror because it was so fun. It was called the Reign of Terror because it was terrible.
Yeah, and it also established a precedent by which those who occupy the upper echelons of society should fear the masses. And that is a good precedent to set. We are the majority.
But not the upper echelons feared the masses. Everybody feared the masses. That's
well,
what's called
like
the Reign
I said,
of Terror, because everybody could be executed at any point.
Like I said, I didn't agree with everything he did, but I would rather everyone be scared of the proletariat, then no one be scared of the proletariat. Because if everyone is scared of the proletariat, at least you have aforementioned reigns of terror being doled out on ideological grounds, which arguments can be made for. If no one fears the proletariat, then everyone lives at the behest of the slave owner, the state politician, the businessman. And at that point, change cannot be made. I will always favor the implementation of values and ideologies which allow for dissidence and revolution within that society than I will for a stable and utterly unmoving paradigm. And if our wages continue to stagnate at our current rates, we will become what some posit has already happened, a third world country, at least in regards to the state of our glorious ethical proletariat. And when that happens, when the state of this country, both economically and socially, arrives at a point at which people are no longer faithful in the current system, we will have to make tough choices about what comes next. And when we have to make those choices, you better fucking believe that the police, that the corporations and all of the economic power they leverage, these forces will work in tandem to prevent the worker from being able to advocate for their rights. And it is at that point that I believe the proletarian revolution is inevitable. The proletariat will whip out their turgid, oversized genitals and collectively slap America in the face with that meat. And together they will build a better society. And I do desperately hope it doesn't turn out to be some Marxist, Leninist, like totalitarian shit. But I mean, you know, there were other material conditions which led to those factors that
I mean, that
weren't
is your
just
personal wet dream of what's going to happen. I don't think